I opened my front door to a man who should have been rotting in a federal prison, not standing in flip-flops on my suburban porch asking, "Hey Alex, long time." The world around me froze, sprinklers ticking, kids laughing down the block, Karen's wind chimes clinking just over the fence. Everything suddenly felt like background noise to the thundering alarm in my chest. My name isn't Alex anymore. I'm not that man. I haven't been for 7 years. But somehow, this walking ghost from a past life had found me. I didn't need to ask how, I already knew. 2 days ago, Karen from the HOA posted my full address on Facebook with a caption like she was announcing the discovery of buried treasure. New guy at 419 Maplewood. Mysterious. Never smiles. Doesn't attend HOA meetings. Probably renting. She even tagged the post with a laughing emoji. It was meant to shame me, maybe just embarrass me into joining her little power parade. But instead, it brought back the exact kind of people I was placed in witness protection to escape. All because Karen couldn't mind her own damn business. It started 3 weeks ago when I moved into the sleepy, painfully manicured neighborhood of Cedar Pines. I was relocated under the name Ben Carter. I picked the corner house with a modest lawn and a single-story layout, not for the view, but for the line of sight. Fewer angles, fewer places to hide. I kept to myself, took my rescue dog for early morning walks, worked from home as a remote IT contractor. No loud parties, no strange visitors. Exactly what the U.S. Marshals advised. Blend in, keep your head down, disappear in plain sight. And for a while I did. Then came the knock. That fateful knock. It wasn't law enforcement. It wasn't a neighbor offering cookies. It was Karen. Clipboard in one hand, smug superiority in the other. Her hair was shellacked into an aggressive helmet, her eyebrows drawn like she was constantly skeptical of your existence. She introduced herself as the acting president of the HOA and immediately began commenting on how I hadn't yet painted my mailbox post the approved almond shade and how the HOA preferred more engaged residents. I smiled tightly, gave her no more than 2 words at a time, and hoped she'd file me under boring and move on. But no. Karen was a bloodhound for drama, and my silence was a scent she couldn't ignore. In the days that followed, she ramped up the scrutiny. I got letters on my door warning of potential violation for grass that was half an inch too long. A neighbor told me she had been seen standing at the end of my driveway writing notes and taking pictures of my garbage bins. I even caught her once snapping photos of the back of my house, pretending to check for raccoons. I sent a report to the HOA board, not that it did any good. She was the board. Or at least she had bullied everyone else off it. Then, out of nowhere, she posted that picture. A grainy, sun-bleached photo of my house, address clearly visible in the caption, shared in a Facebook group called Cedar Pines Neighbors United. The post was public. I didn't even know it existed until another neighbor, who thought it was funny, texted me the link with a laughing emoji. The photo was followed by a stream of replies. Creepy. Looks like a squatter. Why even move here if you don't want to be part of the community? That's when the bottom fell out of my stomach. I recognized the name of one of the commenters. Not from the neighborhood. From a sealed court document. From a life I'd faked my death to leave behind. I called my handler at the marshal's office in a panic. She was calm, collected, and serious. She asked for screenshot. Asked me if I had noticed any strange vehicles. Told me not to go anywhere near the car in the driveway until they could verify it hadn't been tampered with. My dog, a sweet but anxious mutt named Rico, picked up on my fear and didn't leave my side. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I thought someone was coming. Because I knew they already had. 2 days later, that man showed up. And he didn't come to say hello. But rewind just a little, because none of this would have happened if Karen had just left well enough alone. Her thirst for control wasn't about safety. It wasn't even about property values. It was about power. She saw a new resident who didn't immediately grovel, didn't laugh at her passive-aggressive jokes, didn't show up to clap at her every declaration of policy. And that, in her tiny HOA-obsessed mind, made me a threat. So she took it upon herself to expose me, not knowing that her little stunt had just jeopardized a federal investigation, endangered a protected witness, and possibly reactivated violent criminals who thought I was long dead. You'd think after something like that, the marshals would just relocate me again. New name, new town, rinse and repeat. But I'd reached my limit. I couldn't keep running from every Karen with a Facebook account and a vendetta. This time, I asked them for a different option. I had skills. I had a home wired with surveillance. I had a digital footprint so clean you could serve food off it. I told them I wanted to stay, just long enough to fix what she broke. The marshals weren't thrilled. But they agreed to let me stay temporarily, on the condition that I check in daily, and that any further security breaches would force an immediate extraction. I accepted. I had unfinished business. The first step? Find out just how much Karen had shared online. Because if my address was the only thing she exposed, I could contain the damage. But if there was more, if she had posted my car, my dog, my schedule, then I wasn't just in danger. I was compromised. And so was everyone in the neighborhood who had no idea a ticking bomb was now quietly embedded in their HOA Facebook feed, courtesy of the woman they elected to lead them. By the end of the week, I'd find out. And when I did, the truth would be worse than I imagined. Because Karen didn't just post my address. She sold it. And the buyer list wasn't exactly full of friendly neighbors. When I shut the door after that terrifying visit, I didn't even wait for the sound of the man's footsteps to fade. I locked all 4 bolts, pulled the shades, and grabbed the burner phone hidden inside a hollowed-out book behind the bookshelf. My fingers trembled as I dialed the emergency line I hadn't used in almost 2 years. It rang twice before a calm, clipped voice answered, "Confirm code word." I gave it. There was a pause, then the voice hardened. "Stay inside. Activate lockdown. Back up en route." The call ended with no goodbyes. There never were. I didn't move for several seconds. Rico growled softly, standing near the door, tail stiff, ears perked. I went room to room, checking my surveillance feeds, scanning for vehicles or signs that anyone else had followed. The man who knocked hadn't lingered. He didn't need to. That knock wasn't a warning, it was a message. They knew where I was. They knew I was alive. And someone had told them. I already knew who that someone was. Karen's blog post was still up. Public. Proud. I scrolled through it again, this time reading every comment, following every link. There were more photos. One of my front porch. One of my driveway. A close-up of my mailbox, taken from maybe 10 feet away. A zoomed-in shot of a delivery package with my last name visible. The name I was told would never be linked to my new life. I clicked her profile and followed it to a website link in her bio. suburbanwatchqueen.blog. The landing page welcomed visitors to an exclusive portal for premium members who want real-time neighborhood insights. I clicked into a sample post. There, in plain text, she had listed the addresses and activities of multiple neighbors, labeling them with dramatic flair like possible illegal Airbnb operation and midnight garage creeper. I wasn't the only one she had targeted. But I was the only one whose information could get someone killed. I checked the site metadata. It wasn't just a blog, it was a scraper hub. Karen had connected the blog to several other neighborhood watch forums and data aggregators, feeding them fresh content in exchange for affiliate revenue. It was like she had turned the HOA into her own surveillance syndicate. Clicking deeper, I found a member login screen. There was no public registration. Access was invite only. So I created a fake identity and left a comment under a recent post. "Hi, I'm new to the area and interested in learning more about your insights. Especially the new guy on Maplewood. Very curious type." I added a burner email. 20 minutes later, I received a response. "Happy to share what I found. DM me. Donations appreciated for exclusive info." I took a screenshot and forwarded it to my marshal handler with the subject, "We have a problem." By midnight, 2 federal cybercrime investigators were inside my house, laptops open, combing through Karen's digital footprint. They didn't speak much. Just moved with cold precision, mapping site connections, tracing server locations, and capturing every detail that could be admissible in court. After 2 hours, one of them finally looked up and said, "She's not just nosy. She's dangerous." The server she was using hosted 24 similar blogs, some even worse. Doxing, smear campaigns, personal photos sold without consent. The common link? HOA members with unchecked power and a thirst for control. Karen was just the tip of something much uglier. I sat on the edge of the couch, Rico curled beside me, while the agents wrapped up their cloning of Karen's site. My handler called in the middle of it, her voice strained but steady. "We're classifying this as a Tier 2 breach. You can stay for now, but we're installing surveillance on her home. If she so much as tries to publish again, we intercept." "Got it?" I nodded. Not that she could see me. "And Ben," she added, her voice softer, "we'll increase your detail. But this may have gone beyond Karen now." That thought haunted me more than anything else. I had spent years erasing my past, carefully constructing layer after layer of normalcy. Now, all it had taken was one HOA gossip queen with a Wi-Fi signal and a god complex to punch a hole in the firewall. The next morning, I didn't walk Rico. I didn't go outside. I watched the neighborhood from inside, behind tinted glass. Karen was already up, marching around in yoga pants and barking orders to a teenager holding a clipboard, her latest recruit, no doubt. I wondered if she had any clue yet. If she knew federal agents were now watching her browser history in real time. If she suspected the man she accused of being antisocial, and probably a renter, had triggered a federal response team because of her. Or if she was still too busy planning her next blog post about someone's overgrown hedges to realize she had committed a federal crime. But while Karen acted oblivious, I wasn't about to play defense anymore. I started setting up a counteroffensive. I created a second false identity, this time as a journalist looking into suburban surveillance culture. Using that persona, I contacted Karen under the guise of offering her a podcast appearance. She responded almost instantly. "OMG, yes. I've been waiting for someone to cover this. I have so much to say." She didn't even hesitate. I scheduled a video call for the next evening, intending to record every second of it. If she bragged, if she admitted even a fraction of what she'd done, I'd have audio to hand over. Not just to the feds but to the neighborhood, to every person she'd targeted. Meanwhile, the marshals confirmed the man who showed up on my porch was a mid-level enforcer for the Vasquez cartel, one of the organizations I helped dismantle years ago. He had disappeared shortly after the trials but had resurfaced 2 months ago in Arizona. It appeared he'd been looking for me for a while, following digital breadcrumbs, waiting for the right clue to strike. Karen's post had given him that clue. The marshals believed he hadn't acted yet because he didn't know if it was truly me. That meant I had a small window, maybe days, to shut this down before the cartel got bolder. Or worse, send someone who wouldn't hesitate. That night, I didn't sleep again. I watched every camera feed, triple-checked my perimeter alarms, kept a loaded emergency bag by the door. I wasn't afraid, not exactly. I was focused. I had spent so long hiding that I forgot what it felt like to confront a threat head-on. But now the threat was local, and it wasn't just coming from old enemies. It was coming from a woman who thought she ran a neighborhood, but had accidentally threatened a federal witness and exposed herself to a legal nightmare she couldn't begin to comprehend. Tomorrow I'd face her directly. Not with fists, not with fear, but with facts, recordings, evidence, and an audience. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. Karen had turned an entire community into her surveillance project. And now it was my turn to return the favor. Quietly, legally, devastatingly. The next morning began like any other in Cedar Pines. Sprinklers clicking, joggers passing by with fake smiles, and Karen power walking past every house as if the pavement belonged to her. But behind the curtains of 419 Maplewood, I wasn't watching the sunrise. I was preparing for war. The video call was scheduled for 7 p.m. sharp. Karen thought she was going to be featured on a podcast about suburban safety influencers. She had no idea that the person on the other side of the screen would be me, using a synthetic voice and facial mask overlay designed to protect my identity. I wasn't trying to scare her. I was building a trap she would walk straight into, smiling and eager to brag about her empire of gossip and control. But before that happened, I had another plan in motion, one far more public. At noon, I took a walk with Rico for the first time in days. I had deliberately chosen that hour. It was when Karen was usually in her yard pretending to weed her flower bed while spying on whoever dared pass. Sure enough, she looked up as I walked by, giving me a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nice to see you outside, Ben," she chirped. I smiled politely. "Thought I'd enjoy the weather before tonight's HOA meeting. I heard you'll be chairing again?" That froze her for a second. She hadn't expected me to show up, let alone acknowledge the meeting. But she recovered fast. "Of course. Someone has to keep things running smoothly around here. Will you finally be attending?" I nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." Then I walked away without giving her the satisfaction of a longer exchange. She would spend the next few hours wondering what I was up to. Good. Let her sweat. I arrived at the HOA meeting 5 minutes early and took a seat near the back. The room filled with the usual faces: retirees, bored parents, and the occasional newcomer trying to make sense of why their trash can placement warranted a citation. Karen entered like royalty, holding a leather folder and a wireless mic that she didn't need in such a small room but insisted on using anyway. She scanned the crowd, spotted me, and offered a rehearsed smile. The meeting began as expected, with complaints about garden gnomes and a 10-minute rant about someone's unapproved mailbox sticker. But then she moved on to community safety and digital transparency, and that's when I stood up. I raised my hand calmly. Karen looked annoyed but nodded toward me. "Yes, Mr. Carter?" I walked to the front, pulled a small flash drive from my pocket, and plugged it into the projector laptop. "I'd like to share something I found on a public website linked to our community. Since transparency is the theme, I think the board, and every homeowner, deserves to see this." Before she could stop me, the screen behind her flickered to life. A snapshot of Karen's blog appeared, followed by screenshots of her Facebook post showing my address, then metadata logs showing her IP address as the source of a string of doxing posts. Gasps echoed through the room. Karen's expression collapsed into a twitching mask of panic. "Wait, this is a gross invasion of privacy," she shouted. "This isn't real. It's edited." I turned to face the crowd. "Everything you're seeing has been validated by federal agents. This isn't just someone being nosy. It's cyber harassment, and in my case, it's a federal offense. I'm in witness protection, and her actions have endangered a federal program, an investigation, and my life. If you received an invite to her premium gossip site, know that you were participating in illegal surveillance." Silence swallowed the room whole. Even Karen's most loyal sycophants looked like they'd been hit with a stun gun. I could hear phones buzzing as people opened browsers to see the truth for themselves. Karen stammered, waving her arms, voice cracking. "He's making this up. He's probably the criminal." That was when 2 plainclothes agents seated near the back of the room stood up, flashing badges. The woman spoke first. "Karen Fields, you are under investigation for multiple violations, including unlawful dissemination of protected federal witness data, unauthorized surveillance, and cyber misconduct involving financial gain through unauthorized data collection." Karen's knees buckled slightly. She dropped the mic. One of the agents stepped forward and whispered something to her, too quiet for the room to hear, but whatever was said drained the color from her face. She nodded weakly, then turned and left with them, escorted out not in handcuffs, but under tight watch. It was just a meeting, but it felt like a public trial. And I hadn't even gotten to the best part yet. That evening, back at my house, I logged into the scheduled video call using the fake journalist profile. Karen had clearly forgotten or dismissed the meeting in the chaos, but she had already sent me a 5-minute voice memo earlier that day. I opened the audio file and listened. Her voice was bright and smug. "Hey! So excited to chat tonight. I just want to let you know I've been collecting info on neighbors for years. People are nosy by nature. Why not give them what they want and make a little money? You'd be surprised what people pay for a photo of someone's porch when there's a rumor attached. Like this new guy Ben, quiet type. I posted his address and boom, traffic went crazy. I sent that file to the agents, who confirmed that combined with the blog logs, it was more than enough to proceed. They didn't need to charge her that night. What mattered was the evidence now fully aligned with digital tracebacks, proving intent and monetization. Karen wasn't just facing neighborhood outrage now, she was facing court. But her fall wasn't the only consequence that night. After the meeting, a half-dozen neighbors approached me, some apologetic, others just stunned. One of them, an older man named Harold, said quietly, "I always thought something was off about her. She fined me $150 last month for a bird feeder." Another neighbor, a woman named Dana, told me Karen had published pictures of her teenage son online after accusing him of loitering near the clubhouse. It was bigger than me. This was a pattern, a system, a neighborhood-wide data operation disguised as community oversight. That night, I sat outside on my porch, letting Rico rest his head on my knee. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding from ghosts. I was confronting them. But I also knew this wasn't over. Because while Karen was going down, someone else had already seen her post. Someone who didn't need a blog or gossip to act. They needed only a name, a face, and a memory. And that someone had knocked on my door days ago with a smile that chilled my bones. It was 2 days after the HOA meeting when the letter came. No return address, no postmark, no postage at all. Just a plain white envelope slid under my door sometime in the early morning hours. Rico hadn't barked, which meant whoever delivered it was careful, silent, and likely had experience getting into places they shouldn't. I stood there holding it, staring at my name typed cleanly across the front, Ben Carter. The name I'd been living under for nearly 3 years. The name only government agents and my employer knew. I opened it slowly, already sure it wouldn't be good. Inside was a single sheet of paper and an old photograph, grainy, black and white, taken from a courtroom bench. In it, I was sitting at the witness stand under harsh fluorescent lights, my face young and tense, lips parted mid-sentence. The caption beneath, written in clean block letters, read, "Still watching." I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. I walked calmly to the surveillance console and replayed every camera angle from the night before. I found nothing. Whoever had delivered it had either jammed my system or they knew the dead zones, and that was almost worse. I called my handler again. She answered before the first ring finished, voice on edge. "Tell me." I described the envelope and its contents, and she was quiet for a long time. Then she sighed. "They're confirming it. Someone leaked footage of the old trial last month to an encrypted channel we've been monitoring. Looks like you're not just back on the radar, you're being tracked. We're going to have to move you, Ben. Now." I told her I wasn't leaving. Not yet. I still had access to the digital traffic from Karen's site, and I believed someone had used her blog not just to find me, but to send that message. I wanted to trace it, follow the signal back to its source. I wasn't just some scared witness anymore. I had spent the last 2 years working in federal cybersecurity from the shadows. I had tools. I had skills. I wasn't going to run again. I wanted to fight smart this time, not disappear. Reluctantly, the marshals agreed, but on one condition. They were sending a mobile field unit to camp out near my block, disguised as an unmarked utility van. They would remain on standby 24/7. One slip, one confirmed threat at my door again, and I'd be extracted within the hour. I agreed. I had no illusions about heroism. I just needed enough time to expose who was behind this leak before I vanished into yet another fake life. That same afternoon, I used a cloaked laptop to run a reverse search through Karen's original site server. Buried deep within the access logs was a digital fingerprint, an IP address that pinged off a public library network in Tucson, Arizona. It matched a pattern the feds had flagged before, tied to low-level cartel operatives who used public Wi-Fi to mask their activity. But what caught my attention wasn't just the IP, it was the activity trail. Whoever it was had accessed not just Karen's blog, but the raw image file she uploaded of my mailbox, and zoomed in on a barcode label from one of my delivered packages. That detail had no significance to a casual observer, but to someone experienced in digital tracking, it could be used to cross-reference shipping databases. They hadn't just found my house by accident. They had searched, examined, and confirmed before ever showing up. I sent the findings to the marshals. Within hours, they confirmed what I already knew. The man who had knocked on my door had used Karen's post as confirmation, not discovery. He was looking for someone in hiding. Her carelessness had given him exactly what he needed. And now he was circling. Later that evening, I took a walk again. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to make myself visible. I passed neighbors, waved calmly, let them see I was just another guy with a dog. I reached the corner and paused near the utility van. One of the agents inside opened the door and stepped out with a nod. His name was Callum, a quiet type with a thick beard and a tired look that suggested he hadn't slept properly in days. "Still think this is going to end clean?" he asked. I looked up at the clouds. "No. But I think we can control how dirty it gets." That night, I received an anonymous email sent through a scrambled relay server. The subject line read, "You shouldn't have testified. No body. No threats. Just that." The timestamp was 32 minutes after I had passed the utility van. They were watching in real time. My entire system lit up with proximity alerts shortly after midnight. A drone, cheap but functional, had flown over my backyard, hovered for 15 seconds, and disappeared. I watched the playback, followed the trajectory, and flagged the flight path. 2 streets over. Behind Karen's house. I suited up. Not in tactical gear, but in knowledge. I had everything logged, backed up, and forwarded. Karen's blog. The traffic logs. The drone flight. The email headers. I packed it all into a digital folder labeled Package A. And then I prepared Package B, a second folder, more subtle, containing names, emails, and payment records from Karen's subscriber list. I didn't send it yet. I just made sure it was visible. The next morning, Karen's face was plastered across the local news. HOA president under federal investigation for targeting protected witness. The story exploded across social media. Her mugshot, pale and furious, became a meme within hours. The coverage caught fire, and more people came forward. Residents from other neighborhoods, past towns she'd lived in, people she had harassed online under pseudonyms. The woman who claimed to protect the community was suddenly public enemy number 1. The agents told me she would likely be facing years of litigation, if not jail time, due to the federal nature of the breach. But while Karen was being devoured by the public, my problem was quiet. Watching. Waiting. Whoever had sent that photo and email hadn't reached out again. The silence felt louder than noise. I knew it wouldn't last. They were testing me. Trying to see if I would fold, run, vanish again. But I had a different idea. I called my handler and requested access to a limited counterintelligence program. One that would allow me to launch a digital beacon, a controlled leak, but one carefully tracked, embedded with a data spike. I'd bait them into making contact again. And this time, when they did, we'd know exactly where they were sitting. My handler hesitated, but I think she could hear it in my voice. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done being a target. Tomorrow I'd flip the script. Whoever was watching me was about to be watched in return. And this time I'd be the one knocking. The day began without sunlight. Not because it was overcast, but because I had blacked out the windows. Every pane covered, every crack sealed. My house was no longer a home, it was a node in a quiet digital war. I activated the beacon, the digital flare the marshals had authorized. It was a precisely crafted breadcrumb designed to mimic a mistake, a fake metadata leak embedded with a traceable watermark. It was buried in a dummy document I uploaded to a disguised file-sharing site known to be monitored by certain cartel-affiliated bots. The document appeared to be a list of witness protection addresses, disguised as a poorly deleted PDF, with mine highlighted. It was bait, and I had to hope they'd bite without realizing they were swallowing a hook. Within 90 minutes, I got the ping. Someone opened the file using a VPN routed through Eastern Europe. 10 seconds later, they opened it again, this time from a Los Angeles server. Then a third time, this time from a location just an hour outside my own town. That was the mistake. In their curiosity, they switched to a closer mirror network, maybe to plan logistics. They dropped the mask for a few milliseconds, long enough for the trace to activate. The beacon embedded inside the file transmitted their device's MAC ID and local network signature directly to the federal endpoint we'd prep. We had them. Not a name. Not a face. But a place. A house. A block. The kind of information you can use when the game flips from defense to offense. I received the location within 15 minutes. It was a rented ranch house near a truck stop. Just outside town, rural, easy to disappear into. The marshals planned to move immediately. But I asked them to wait. Just 30 more minutes. I wanted to watch it happen. I needed to. For every year I had lost to hiding. For every night I lay awake wondering if the door would burst open. For the man I used to be. The one who had the nerve to testify in front of killers and the stupidity to think it would end there. The tactical team moved in fast and quiet. I watched the feed from a marshal's body cam, live-streamed to my secure device. They entered without resistance. 3 men inside. 2 with priors. 1 had photos of my face in an envelope. The same photo Karen had posted. The same one they had zoomed in on through her public blog. They also found a burner phone, a pistol with the serial filed off, and a handwritten note that read, "Confirm ID." No engagement unless verified. It was confirmation. I wasn't just a loose end. I was a loose end they were still deciding whether to cut or not. By the time the news reached me that all 3 were in custody, the adrenaline hadn't worn off. It wasn't relief. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was emptiness. Like everything I'd fought for had been a holding pattern. I had survived, yes, but surviving isn't living. And now that Karen's circus was collapsing, and the men who had followed her digital trail were in federal custody, the silence that followed felt louder than the chaos ever did. But silence didn't mean stillness. Over the next week, more of Karen's online infrastructure was dismantled. Her blog was taken down. Her financial records were subpoenaed. Turns out she wasn't just doxing neighbors. She had been making money selling that data to marketing firms under the table. Real estate companies, political canvassers, even one private investigator service that offered background checks to anyone with a PayPal account. She had monetized her neighbors' lives, and I had just happened to be the one that turned her side hustle into a federal indictment. The HOA disbanded 2 weeks later. At the emergency meeting, nobody fought it. Even Karen's friends voted to dissolve it. Liability was too high. Reputation was dead. What had started as a neighborhood watch had turned into an empire of control, and now it lay in ruins. I attended that meeting in the back again, silent, hood up. A few neighbors recognized me, nodded. Others avoided eye contact. I didn't blame them. My presence reminded them just how fragile their sense of normal really was. The next morning, I received a message from my handler. One line, "You've been approved." I knew what it meant. The Department of Justice had agreed to my request. I wouldn't be moved this time. I wouldn't get a new name or a new zip code. Instead, I'd be reassigned internally, kept on in a capacity that gave me tools and purpose while still remaining under protected status. My work in digital forensics had proven too valuable, and the way I handled the breach, methodical, clean, traceable, had shown them I was more than a liability. I was an asset. They gave me access to a new clearance level, a workspace buried in a federal node, and an encrypted channel to begin training junior agents on digital surveillance threats hidden in plain sight. HOA data leak, personal doxing, small-town blogs masking big-time exposure. My experience had turned into curriculum. My trauma had found a direction. I didn't speak about Karen. I didn't need to. Her case would be handled publicly, and her name would remain the warning label on every file I touched moving forward. But I didn't disappear. Not this time. I kept the house on Maplewood. I reinforced it, changed the security systems, wired it with thermal cameras, fiber net, and blackout protocols. I wasn't paranoid, I was prepared. And instead of fearing who might knock next, I was now the one who could watch for them first. 3 months later, I launched a side project, a quiet, anonymous blog for whistleblowers and suburban victims of HOA abuse. It didn't use names. It didn't expose anyone. But it taught people how to protect themselves, what to look out for, what to never allow. I published under the alias Reboot. I never promoted it, but it went viral anyway. People were hungry for the truth, and the truth was this: control hides behind kindness. Surveillance hides behind safety. And sometimes, the biggest threat isn't the stranger in the black van, it's the neighbor with the clipboard who thinks she knows what's best for everyone. I never saw Karen again. Last I heard, she was fighting the charges, blaming me for everything. But blaming me wouldn't erase the data logs. It wouldn't undo the voice memos she recorded or the smug emails she sent bragging about her network. No, Karen had already sealed her fate the moment she decided to publish my address to the world for likes and petty power. And as for the men who came looking for me, they weren't the last. I knew that. Somewhere out there, more of them would come. The web never forgets, not fully. But this time, I wouldn't be hiding. I'd be waiting. And when they came, they wouldn't just find a witness. They'd find a firewall with teeth.